But again, glad everybody's here. It's been a great conference so far. We're going to wrap up with two great panels today. But before we do, I do want to thank everyone who attended the Benefit Providers breakout. Thanks to Lauren and Michelle, Peter, Tammy, getting everybody in there. I've heard it was a great session. Sponsored by the Washington HBPA, Indiana HBPA, and the Arkansas HBPA. So thank you for that. Also, our breakfast sponsor, as a reminder, the Iowa HBPA. I almost said it. The Iowa Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association. I'm not going to say Idaho because I was told to make a joke for where's Brandy. And then the New England HBPA. Thank you again for a great breakfast. The French toast looked amazing. So I'm glad everybody joined us for this session. I think that you go back to 2021, coming out of COVID, we had what we called an extended executive committee meeting, kind of a mini conference. But Richard Rydell, who's normally been with us all the time and with our benefit providers panel and committee, one of his big pushes for quite some time has been dealing with mental health on the racetrack. And I know there's a lot of initiatives that we've seen in the press recently regarding, jockeys, and kind of everything seems to revolve around that. But at the end of the day, it's not just jockeys. I mean, this is a very pressure industry. I know for me, being on the farm side for as long as I was, I've been pretty open coming out of COVID with some of my mental health issues. Obviously everybody in Florida knows who the Stronach family is. And so imagine working for them for 15 years, you can kind of see where that stress comes from. So, but I'm really proud to kind of bring this panel up, kind of an extension of what we did in 2021, talking about the issues, but also talking about the solutions. And that's what we really need to focus on, is where we go, when we need help. But when you can tie that help with off-track thoroughbreds, to me, that's a win-win situation. So I'm honored to have with us today Sally Jane Mixon and Megan Riley. If I can get them to come up, they're going to talk to you a bit about Abijah, the off-track thoroughbreds transforming the industry, and what they've done to facilitate, in a local place at Canterbury in Minnesota, but certainly a program, as I've been able to view through their videos, something that can definitely expand across the country and also into other affiliates. So thank you both for being here. Thank you.
Thanks. Wait, is this on?
Oh.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, I can't sit. I'm sorry. Okay. So thank you so much for having us. We need the clicker.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Sally Jane Mixon. I wanted to start out just by sharing, sometimes things come out of my mouth that I regret. Like yesterday, I told the senator to not suck on his way up here, and I just met him, so that's fun. So things like that you might hear throughout the day or the morning. But a little bit more about myself is founder of Abijah's. You're going to learn all about Abijah's today. I have a master's in professional counseling. I hate counseling myself, so that plays into why we're using horses. I'll share about that. Over 20 years in the mental health field, over a decade incorporating horses. 30 years working with horses in general. I'm the chaplain at Canterbury Park. So I love God and horses and sometimes cussing. Pretty real. I'm an exercise rider, so that's really like my Christmas every morning, is I get to wake up and get on these thoroughbreds and watch the sunrise and hang out with my people, and it's just the best thing in the world. So love doing that. I'm a backsider, so I'm part of that family. Daughter of a Marine, and that'll play into Abijah's and that culture that I grew up in. And then I have twin brothers. I have an older sister as well, but my twin brother is younger. They're both in law enforcement. and that's going to play into this as well. So it's a little bit about me. I'm going to go through our team here. Megan, she's the founder of Furlong Learning. You're going to hear a lot about that today. I'm just going to kind of, you jump in, but something that is amazing about Megan is she's also a backsider and part of the community. She's a groom, she's a hot walker, she's in the trenches with us, if you will. But something that's really unique about Megan is in her previous life, she trained predators for the film industry. So lions, tigers, bears, legitimately, that was something she did. And so kind of transitioning into the prey world of horses, there's a pretty cool story there. So I encourage y'all to just talk with her after this and learn more about her. But anything you want to add, Meg?
Oh, I'll add.
Okay. Okay. Danny Palmer, she's my business partner. She's not here today, but she's incredible. She has worked globally on movements, on partnering with Global Project or Poverty Project, Twin Cities Film Festival. She worked very diligently with EGALA, and I don't know if anybody in the crowd knows what that is, but at one point it was the largest kind of movement of therapy incorporating horses. And so that kind of is a transition into Lynn Thomas founded EGALA. She's a really dear friend of mine. I've worked with her. She's been a mentor of mine for over 10 years. She also created and founded Arenas for Change. Arch is what we call it. And that's the method that I'll get into that we do at Abijah's. The mental health kind of methodology that we use. So she is an amazing, incredible woman. One of these days I want her to come with me to present here. She's just kind of she's awesome. So that's our team. We also have other equine specialists back home, other counselors that are doing sessions as we speak. And with that, I'll kind of dive into who the heck we are. So Abijah's, it's where the value of a racetrack and a racehorse is redefined. And I think that this idea of value is really important because at a track, right, the value of a horse, the value of a racetrack is the money, right? And so we want to think outside the box at Abijah's and bring in a whole different perspective of what value is. So Abijah's is the bridge between the racing industry and community wellness, pairing off-track thoroughbreds with professional counselors. We meet the mental health need from the backside communities of the tracks to the front lines where first responders and military serve. I'm not going to stick on this slide very long, but we all know the challenges, right? The off-track thoroughbreds need a second career. A lot of the thoroughbreds we work with cannot be ridden. So if you think about a horse, right, if they have a severely bowed tendon, they can't jump, they can't polo, they can't do anything in the physical realm after they retire, they're pretty much worthless. And so at Abijah's, they're actually saving lives. And so their value is just as big, is just as valuable as Justify, in my opinion. So backside workers, first responders have a really interesting parallel. Their trauma, and I'm going to use that word, their trauma, their mental health is very similar. And that's something I recognize being in both worlds growing up. There's a lot of grit that goes into being a backstretch worker. And there's a lot of grit that goes into being a first responder, especially coming out of Minneapolis. I'm sure y'all heard all of that a few years back, right? There was a lot of things that were going on. And so wanting to kind of bridge those two passions of mine. And then obviously the racing industry, the negative PR, we've heard all about it yesterday and ongoing. We need to show the public, the world, that racing is so much more than what they think. Like racing is saving lives. And I know that sounds extreme, but I want you to lean into it for the next few minutes because that is truly what's happening in Minnesota. And I believe it can happen all over the country. And when people see the transformation happening at racetracks, they can't shut us down or they're assholes. Right? Like, I mean, it's amazing. Like it's an incredible thing that's happening. So excited to share. Quick statistics here. 1 in 4 people are struggling with mental health. And I would argue probably more post-COVID. As you know, as Eric, as you mentioned. I mean, there's just a lot of struggle in the world today. The thing with traditional talk therapy is it doesn't work for everybody. It didn't work for me. I mean, I almost died of anorexia in my college years, so a long time ago. Um, I never half-assed anything, being a daughter of a Marine, so I was a really good anorexic, and that was my mentality. Thank the Lord that it wasn't drugs because I would have overdosed. But so much therapy when you're talking with people, if you don't trust people, it's not going to work. For me, the horses saved my life at a really young age. I grew up riding. I was 5 years old, fell off my first horse, and I was hooked. The adrenaline, feeling it, like this is awesome. So horses have a innate ability to heal. And we're going to dive into actually why and how that works. So the solution, which is the exciting part, is we're going to merge off-track thoroughbreds with the backside community, with military and first responders, and we're going to do it at racetracks or farms around racetracks. But our home base, we market it that we're at and out of a racetrack, wherever that racetrack is. So that's going to give incredible PR to racetracks. It's going to become known for saving lives, horses and humans. We're not going to be talking about breakdowns. We're going to be talking about lifting people up, lifting horses up. And we're going to bring in first responders and the public. So there's a legislative pull in that too that I'll dive into. So we're meeting the need in a really unique way to usher in that new era of racing, which I think we desperately need right now. So the method, Abijah's method, is ARCH, as I shared. It's a therapeutic model that incorporates a mental health professional at a master's level, and then an equine specialist with a minimum of 4,000. At Abijah's, we do 6,000 hours of herd dynamic, meaning it's not just riding, it's understanding the horse as an animal, as a being, as a herd. They then go on to be they go on for more schooling into the ARCH model. And so they're certified under that model. At Abijah's, we also do cultural training in the racing industry with off-track thoroughbreds, the backstretch and first responder and military. So if you're going to work and be a part of Abijah's, you need to be engulfed in the culture of it and kind of know what you're talking about. That is so, so important to us. So what happens and how this works, there's no riding. And it's not horsemanship. And I've been asked over and over again, how do horses help people that work with horses? It has nothing to do with horses in their session. These incredible animals are so intuitive. They're going to pick up on what's going on internally and they play it out. It is the weirdest thing. From working with Navy SEALs, I work a lot with WARCOM and Navy Special Warfare, to our other veterans, first responders, and the backside workers, this works. And it is completely mind-blowing. And my job is to watch miracles. That's what I tell people. So off-track thoroughbreds, in the mental health field, in the equine therapy world, which is a phrase that really doesn't make sense because it sounds like horses need therapy. And that's not what's happening at all. But in that equine mental health field, thoroughbreds often are viewed as kind of crazy, right? Kind of hot, kind of like, we need some 30-year-old gelding, that's just hanging out in the pasture to do this work. That's not what we have found. And so we've really taken on this off-track thoroughbred, but also I would love to get into the off-track quarter horse because it's a race horse, to use these athletes working with our military first responders and the people that work with them every day. They're a special breed. They don't slow down until they break down. That's a first responder. That's a backsider. The grit and the tenacity it takes, the resiliency of these people. And when you hear their story of how they got here, I mean, there is so much amazing, like, fourth quarter mentality in our people. And so it matches the thoroughbred, it matches the racehorse. And so I think that's just a beautiful collaboration. So I'm bringing this picture up because I'm embarrassing you, Justin. I apologize. Rocket Wrench Racing is Justin Revak's, racing silks, whatever. And Rocket Wrench, this horse, he has a white wrench on his face. He's so cute. Not you, Justin, the horse. But he was the first horse that inspired Rocket Wrench Racing to become a thing. And so this particular horse, there's amazing stories I have about him, but I'm going to share a story that recently happened. And a lot of these stories are going to be with first responders because I was debating, like, I do have a ton with first responder or with backstretch workers I can share too. But I want you all to understand the bridge. It's making the racetrack bigger than the racetrack. It's healing lives outside. It's elevating the value of racing in our country. So a little background, I was working with a Marine who's now in law enforcement. And this is his story. Everything that we do in the model is about your story. So we say things like, what character could that be in your story? What could that represent? And because these horses are so intuitive, as I said, they pick up on what the story is of that person and they play it out. They're not horses. This Rocket Wrench is kind of an asshole. And he was like, what he represented in this man's story is incredible. It was not Rocket. It's like something happens in these sessions and these horses begin to transform lives. So this Marine came to us. He had this internal battle because he didn't feel bad about what he did overseas. Half his squad was killed in action. More were killed from suicide when he returned. He just was angry, frustrated, and he wanted to get back into the battle. His anxiety was sky high because in his mind, he came from his story. He came from a very strong Catholic background. And in order to be forgiven, he said, I don't feel bad for killing who I killed. So how do I navigate this? He walked up to Rocket. Actually, Rocket walked up to him in this session. We're in this paddock. And all of a sudden, he started sweating, and he's a big dude, all tatted up. When you look at him from the outside, like he's a bad dude, like he wouldn't be scared of anything. And his heart rate went up. He started sweating. As a counselor, I said, okay, what is happening right now? What's going on? And Rocket is right here. And he goes, I feel how I feel if I see a church. He's like, I can't do it. Okay. So we step out of the paddock for a minute and he kind of collects himself. And now this is fun because I'm a chaplain. And so I get to his story happens to be about God. So I'm like, yeah, well, let's go to church today. And he looked at me, he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, let's go to church. We're going to go into that space and we're going to lean into that anxiety and just take a risk today. So he steps into the paddock with me and Rocket. And he clips the lead rope up to Rocket and he starts walking with him. And he's walking all over the space, 100, 200 feet out, right? Just like spending the day out there. And he's walking in a sense with God because now Rocket isn't a horse. He's representing the big entity that this Marine is terrified to face because of the lives he's taken on our country's behalf. So he's walking with this horse. And my facilitator, Dina, he comes back to us and she said, what would happen if the connection wasn't physical? And we looked at the lead rope Like, what if there was a connection you were able to have where it wasn't it was truly relationship? And he looked at us, he's like, well, if I unhook him, he could like run me over. Fair, totally could. What else could happen? He's like, well, I don't even know. Like it is absolutely terrifying to me. So, well, we're taking risks today. Why not? This Marine unhooks the physical connection from God. And he begins to walk 100 feet out. And Rocket, the whole time, stride by stride, puts his nose on this Marine's shoulder and walks with him. Rocket doesn't do that. Rocket bites. Rocket doesn't like this. That's not the horse from a horse person, Rocket doesn't do that. But he has his head rested on this Marine and they're walking step in step. He goes 100, 200 feet. He comes back to me and Dina. And all of a sudden, Rocket just lays down at this Marine's feet. And the tears come. And there was a moment when he said, I think I need to take that risk. Like these horses are doing things that are truly transforming lives. And this is a Marine, a law enforcement, a dad, a father. It's absolutely like incredible what's happening at Abijah's daily, weekly, monthly. It's happening at Canterbury Park. So with that, I'm gonna transition to a video here. And it's a testimonial, and I'll let him kind of hook up to that. But this will give you an idea of kind of how a session is, how it works, and kind of bring you into a story. His name's Todd, and I will go from there.
Abijah's on the backside, collaborates with off-track Thoroughbreds, working with veterans and first responders.
My name's Todd Sellner. I've been a firefighter for almost 25 years.
One of the most beautiful things with Todd is that he doesn't want to be vulnerable, but he's willing to put himself in a vulnerable place, coming here every week. Anytime you're dealing with trauma, often we don't have words to express that. Our bodies express that. These horses are so intuitive and they pick up on things going on inside of us.
The horses tend to play physically out as to what I'm feeling. I guess living vicariously through me allowed me to let it out, let it go. I wish I could explain it. I can't.
I am in awe of what these thoroughbreds do.
It almost sounds unbelievable. And yeah, I'd witnessed it myself. I had a bad call right before I came. My emotions were off kilter. The horses reacted. Whatever was going on inside me went through them.
When he's watching them lose it, it's almost like they're doing it for him. He doesn't have to. Like they got it.
Definitely seen changes in myself. The Abijah's program absolutely would be beneficial to first responders, veterans, the support that they should get.
When our stories change, we change. And we have that ability to change them. That's healing at its finest. That's not a Band-Aid. When you walk out of here and you're transformed, that's powerful.
So that's one of hundreds of testimonials that we have. These stories happen with our grooms, with trainers, yes, with jockeys, but there was a groom that I was working with in my barn a couple years ago, and I noticed something was pretty off with him. He kept he wasn't putting my saddle on right, and every time I get a leg up, something, it was off. It was getting kind of dangerous. And that evening I came into the barn and he was sitting there and his head was low. And he was going through alcohol withdrawals, which is really dangerous. So I said, all right, Bertho, like we gotta do something. And so we got him in to the hospital just to detox, just to like make sure that he was healthy and safe. And within a week, we got him set up with Abijahs. We have interpreters as well that we work with. And he started sessions. And there was this big gray horse named Dangerous Wave that kept looking out of the space we were in. Like she just kept looking out. And we asked him, like, what is outside of this? And he said, my home. I haven't been home to Mexico in years. I miss my wife. I miss my kids. And I drink because, like, what else am I supposed to do? And there was this, I have no idea why, God probably, there was this red bucket, water bucket in the space we were in. And this horse, this thoroughbred, she walks over to it. She puts her nose in the bucket and she snorts. And she runs back out and looks outside of the space. She does this 3 times. And I look at him like, what could, in your story, like, what is this? And more tears came and he said, that's my drinking. So now we have this representation, this bucket of drinking, and this 1,200-pound animal is coming over and just snorting at it. The 4th time she came over, she put her nose in it, snorted, turned around and double-barreled the bucket. Completely through addiction, 10 yards away. And he just starts shaking. He said, how do I do that? We're going to help you, Bertho. We're going to work with you. So rather than just talking about struggle, there is a physiological, scientific fact that happens where there's a disconnect between the brain and the body. And when people experience things, when your senses are heightened, that's why trauma sticks with people, because they go and do a call and they smell things, feel things, touch things, hear things, all of the senses are heightened. And that's why you can't shake it. That's why you're like, I feel fine. I know I'm safe, but I can't put my back to the exit. I got to face it. It's weird how trauma affects us. It's weird how life experiences affect us. And in Berto's case, that's what was happening. And he had this experience where he saw what that could be, the freedom of that, and who or what this character in his story that kicked the bucket for him, not in a bad way, but like got rid of that addiction, what that could be. And he was able to process that and talk about relationships in his life and what that represented. So all of that to say, there's more. And I'm really excited to introduce Megan to talk about the youth side of this. Thank you. Okay. Little notes.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you. This is awesome. We are so excited to be here, and you guys, this has been great. So it's an honor. Thank you. Sal gave a little bit of an introduction about me, but I can use this. I forgot. I founded Furlong Learning in 2020, and the mission, I won't focus so much on the mission, but I'm going to focus on learning. And I learned long ago that education was available far beyond the walls of a classroom. There was education everywhere. I believed that there were opportunities that existed everywhere. I realized that you could create an individual path. We all have a path. We all have prior knowledge that we bring. We all have experience that we bring. We all have a wealth of different information. We have goals. We have a lot of things that we bring to the journey. So my path, my path is a little different. It's probably similar to that of Dora the Explorer. I don't know if any of you have kids, but just a little bit about my background. When I was a kid, I loved horses, so I started my love for the racing industry, riding horses through fields, wind blowing through my hair. That's kind of where my gypsy soul grew. I took odd and end jobs at, waiting tables, racetracks. That's where I started my first job in the racing industry. I was shoveling, stalls at a racetrack. I was trying to think, this experience has kind of made me think about a lot about the journey. And do you remember when we got National Geographic magazines in the mail back in the day? I mean, you could order like an entire set of National Geographic magazines, and we had encyclopedia sets.
Marty Stauffer.
Yes,
Yeah.
Marty Stauffer.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I had my family would order National Geographic magazines. And so we had a whole set right next to the set of encyclopedias. And as a kid, I would flip through there and I would say, I want to go there. I want to learn about this. I want to do that. And so that's where it all began. I graduated high school, and I was a kid that had an interesting path in high school. I was a 504 kid, which is a special policy. I had special assistance. I had Lyme's disease for 7 years. So I learned I had assistance and some special services available to me. So yeah, I grew up in a family of educators, and so I had that value of learning instilled very early in my life. And I decided first I would go to school. That was important. But then I remembered those National Geographic magazines, and I traveled. And so I went to the places that I learned and I read about in the magazines, and I decided to learn a language. That was Spanish. I came back and I continued going to school. I went back to Montana where I began, and I wanted to learn about animals in Yellowstone and the ecosystem and pack dynamic. I I thought about what better place to provide a relevant, accessible program with experiential learning opportunities than a racetrack. And so the story begins in a barn, my story of furlong. As I took a job back in the barn, when was it? 2020. I had a job offer with the Minnesota Zoo, and it was COVID. So they yeah, COVID. And they discontinued my position. So I paused for a minute and I said, what am I going to do with my life? I am going to go back to Canterbury Park where I started, and I'm going to be a groom. And so I was working for a trainer, and every morning this little girl would come up and she would tug on my shirt, and she had known that I was a teacher. And she said, Miss Megan, can I get help with my homework? Can I get a little bit of help with my homework? And I said, of course, Maria, of course you can have help with your homework. And So every morning we would sit at that picnic table and we would study. And she was able to advocate for herself and she wanted to learn. And I said, if you show up, I'll show up. So every day we showed up at that picnic table. Every morning after 4 hours of chores, we worked together. We studied together. She had siblings. She had 3 siblings. So, what was it? After that first year of the kids coming up while we were working in the barn and discovered that there were 3 siblings, I approached the trainer and the HBPA and had said, there's a need. There's a need back here. There's at least 3 kids. What would you think about, or would you consider providing a tutoring service? So in 2020, we lifted off a tutoring program. It was myself and another licensed teacher. She had a master's degree and had a master's degree in curriculum development. And we started tutoring the 3 kids. In 2021, we came back and there were 24 students. We were providing supplemental educational services, now ESL classes, an athletic component. 2022, there were 37 students, supplemental educational services, an athletic component, on-site excursions. In 2023, this was the big year. We had the supplemental educational services, ESL, an athletic component, off-site excursions, outreach, community garden, soccer association partnership. And that's the big part about the youth component. We have now reached out and formed partnerships with community programs like the soccer association. We had sponsors come in and teach the kids how to build. And then in 2024, we now had 54 students, supplemental educational services, ESL athletic component, an offsite excursion outreach community garden, soccer association, what else? Resource center, art classes. We did an art expo. And then the part that I'm most excited about is now we have a newly formed partnership with Parks and Wellness. So with that being said, Sal and I have been working together to introduce On Track SEL. I'll just tell you a little bit about SEL. So SEL is a model that focuses on social and emotional learning. And it's a curriculum that supports a transient community. It's important because it's an approach that uses a holistic approach. We know the lifestyle of the backstretch workers is it's difficult. Yeah, it's a model that supports mental health. It's core. We can look at the core. There's proof in the progress. There's about 50% of the population right now is integrating the ESL into their overall curriculum. Approximately 60% of educators have received training related to the ESL. And currently 40% of US states have received specific funding allocated for social and emotional learning initiatives. So it's working, the model's working. And now Abijah's and Furlong are going to bring forces and horses together to pilot this program. Some of the core competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So kids are getting the academic assistance, but what we're gonna help them do is get more in touch with how to manage feelings and emotions. With Sal's program and the model that we're using in the classrooms currently, we'll be able to teach kids how to externalize the struggles that they might be having in the classroom. So my personal experience with this model happens to be the social awareness, and it didn't hit home until it happened with my stepdaughter. And we were in our barn one day, and we're fortunate to have we have horses, 2 donkeys, and and I didn't believe the model necessarily would work until it was the day that her and I had a chat. And we're in the barn, and our sassy mare, she decided to boot our gelding. And this particular activity, the social awareness activity, is called empathy mapping. And so it uses characters to kind of draw out what the kids are thinking or feeling. It helps them externalize and process the emotions that they're having. So we're standing in the barn, and the Star, she kicks the gelding, and it was kind of a ruckus in the barn, and we start discussing it. And she said, well, why did Star do that? And I said, I don't know. Why do you think that Star did that? And she said, well, is she mad? Is she mad at the other horses? And I said, I don't know. What do you think? And how did that make? We started a sequence of questions, and we kind of talked about herd dynamic. And so we took the empathy map and we moved it into Sal's model, and we kind of externalized the scenario. And I asked, well, do you have a herd? And she said, I don't get what do you mean? And she said, a herd. Yeah, I have a herd. I said, well, what's your herd? Well, my herd's the classroom. And I said, okay, well, do you have somebody in your class that might be mean to their friends? And she said, well, yeah, actually I do. She has a bully in her class. And so we took the herd dynamic and we moved it over into her own real life situation. And we discovered that through the empathy mapping and the use of these characters, these horses, that she was able to determine that Star, the bully, the sassy mare, was actually Freddie in her class, who's a bully, who was being mean to her friends. And through the empathy map, she learned that Freddie was mean because Freddie couldn't see. And so we were able to open up a line of communication that I think that she may not have been able to have otherwise, without taking the experience from the horses and making it her own in her own classroom herd.
So I kind of want to go back to the vision and who we are, and taking the spirit of racing to a whole new level. And as a kid, I loved the underdog. I was a huge fan of Winning Colors, 5 years old, watching her win the Derby, and she was an underdog. I mean, people were yelling at her, she doesn't belong in this race. Again, daughter of Marine. So I was like, oorah, like she's winning this. And she did, she won. And I think that's what makes racing so addicting in a beautiful way, is every single one of you in the audience has been an underdog at some point in your life. As a kid, as an employee, as a boss, whatever, you feel like nobody's believing in you. And so at Abijah's, we take that, and the underdog always has a chance. It always does. It's the only place that the underdog is fought for, is bet on, is believed in. Even when people are, saying you should not be there, you're not deserving. And I think a lot of times in the populations that we work with the backstretch community, with the grooms, with then transferring that into the first responder and military population, they tell themselves that they're not worth it. That's mental health stuff we're talking about, that they're internalizing they're not worth it. And when a 1,200-pound animal chooses them and says, no, you are, that experience transforms them. So wanting to bring racing or bring Abijah's to every single track in the industry. It's a win-win. It's a win for the backside community. It's a win for horses. It's a win for the surrounding community. It's a win for the industry. So people can say we need racetracks. Something that's happened in Minnesota recently is Abijah's has been able to get legislation funding. And because of that, we're saying this is happening at the racetrack. So you need to be nice to them. You need to understand that Canterbury Park is helping people learn how to run their race. This is bigger than a Saturday night racing. This is bigger than the daily racing forum, right? It's bigger than the bet. We're trying to open up the eyes of the community, of the public, and help them see that racing is so much more. It's about the story of the underdog. And right now, the industry is the underdog. And I 100%, I'm so convicted. I'm willing to look like a fool. I'm so convicted that this could help transform the industry. We are in a mental health crisis, and we have tons of penicillin in the shape of 1,200-pound animals. And it's freaking awesome. So with that, I will pause. I don't even know what time it is, but that's our presentation. Would love to answer questions or talk at some point with y'all.
Mine is more in the form of some comments. I'm from Minnesota. I'm very biased towards these programs. So I'll preface that. The Abijah's and furlong, excuse me, are critical and amazing to our track. Mental health is so important, but I'll share something. When Meg came in to propose her furlong learning to us, I was a cynic. I'm like, do kids really want to go to school during the summertime, during their off time? Her statistics, 3 in the beginning to 54 now, says yes. So I am so glad to have been proven wrong. Thank you, guys.
So I'm also from Minnesota, so I'm biased about this too, but, and Sally touched on this a little bit about how it's bigger than the racetrack and how it's great for publicity. So we're, as many people know, we're fighting for our future in Minnesota with trying to get legislation to increase our purses. And so as I think somebody else talked about yesterday, we have to make friends with legislators. And so we've done, I don't know, 20, 30 tours of our racetrack, bringing legislators out for day at the races, bringing them out to the backside in the morning. And nothing resonates more with those legislators than talking about these programs. Some of them could care less about horse racing. They're holding their nose coming out to visit us. But when we take them back to the chapel and talk about these programs, suddenly they're all interested in that, whether they're Republican or Democrat. This resonates with everyone and it's great publicity for our racetrack.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, this sounds like a wonderful program. Do you have ideas or plans to expand it? And what would other places do to start?
No, thank you for that. Yes, our plan is to expand this to racetracks, whoever wants us. We want to come in and help and elevate the industry, whether that's legislatively broadening out to the community with first responders, military, and then going really in the mental health aspect of your track, and helping those people. So, we have a scaling, like how we would scale, and we can get into all of that, the budget, how we're going to fundraise. We are a 501c3. I fundraise my tail off. And so there's a will, there's a way, and we'd make it happen. So that's our heart and our passion.
Well, just an amazing panel. Gets emotional. I've watched that video a few times. Sally had sent it to me, and also growing up, the son of a Marine, you kind of get these hardened feelings, and then you realize, there's people out there that can help, but you also have to help yourself. And when you look at what the amazing Thoroughbreds can do, never ceases to amaze me. So thank you for telling the story, for both of you. Thank you. Also would like to thank the Minnesota HBPA, obviously, and then also my friend Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Nation, who helped bring that panel together. So thank you. So our